and I definitely believe that continue. I was just getting consent that it's being recorded. Maybe we could go on mute. And like Adem said, Village to Nation has put together this session, and we're going to go about, today we're going to really focus on design thinking and project management. And I would love this session to be as interactive as it could get. So my name is Maureen Amakabane, and I'm going to take you through. I'll be your instructor or facilitator for today. So the main objectives of today's session, the main objectives for today's session include understanding the role of design thinking in entrepreneurship and social enterprises. And a lot of organizations are now shifting to social enterprises. So even NGOs and CBOs, there's an urgent need for people who or individuals who are running these organizations to start understanding how to effectively manage resources for sustainability purposes. And then, of course, the role of design thinking in social enterprises, and then how do you apply design thinking in your social enterprise? Adem, I think what you can do is, if you see any question in the chat box, because I'm not able to see my chat, I'm not able to see my chat box. So if you see any questions, just raise your hand and then I can take it in as we go. So feel free to also ask questions on the go. If you need clarity on anything, just feel free to ask questions as we go and then as we interact. And then once in a while, I'll throw in questions just to see if we are leaning in. What time is our break, Adem?
In an hour. So
in an hour. So that's at 10:30.
Yeah.
Super. Cool. So my name is Maureen. Like you said, I am an avid or serial entrepreneur, and I got into entrepreneurship by default. So in 2012, I was in the corporate private sector, and I had just changed jobs. So I was moving from one industry to another. Interesting, I like joking. So I was in the toilet industry and then I moved into the food industry. So I left the output and I went into the input. And then one morning I went to the office and I was unceremoniously fired, I mean, my experience, I think that shock and that experience and what I felt after, I was like, no, I don't think I just realized you don't have control over employment. So I felt like I needed to take charge of my life so that if any decision like that happens in future, I'm able to kind of anticipate. Fortunately for me, I was running a side hustle, and my side hustle was actually consulting. So I was already consulting for medium enterprises, especially in sales and marketing. So a lot of businesses struggle in sales and marketing, and I was already helping my friends or people that I knew in my network to really streamline their side hustles. So maybe somebody has gone to China. That's the time China was also really picking up. So a lot of people had gone to China and women had gone to Turkey and brought in clothes and they couldn't really sell. Then they would come to me and they're like, okay, how can we sell? So that's how I already had several clients that I was serving. And I felt the amount of money that I was making at the time was able to sustain me. So I subsequently went into employment and then I interrogated some of the skills that I had acquired. And, I'd spent like 5 years in the sanitation sector. And I was aware of the opportunity that existed in the sanitation sector. So that's how I started my sanitation startup. So I'm the founder of Usafi Sanitation Limited, which is we build toilets for schools, and then Nyayo Mam Sokos, which is an online platform that provides women within our community a platform to transact and trade. And then I'm also a co-founder for Beyond Colors, and Beyond Colors, we support medium and small enterprises in matters strategy and organization development, and we also run trainings. So we conduct trainings as this, but very, very specific and targeted to individual organizations. My background is in business administration and marketing. I'm a graduate of the United States International University, and I'm also a trained design thinking instructor with Proportion Academy from the Netherlands. So that's a bit about myself. So now we are looking at what is design thinking. So really, design thinking is a process. It's not an event. It's a process of creating new innovative ideas and solving problems. So how are you identifying can you identify the problem and then think through the process? So design thinking is also a human-centered, it has a human-centered core. It encourages organizations and businesses to focus on the people they are creating for the solution, which leads to better products and services and internal processes. So that's the definition of design thinking. So have it at the back of your head. And as we are going through these slides, think about your organization. Like, for example, the lady from Pokot, in your introduction, I already saw you started thinking about the human. So not only are you creating a CBO that is supposed to support women, you're also cognizant to the fact that you're in an environment that is extremely patriarchal. So that's already, you're already starting to apply elements of design thinking. So you're in this community and you're alive to the fact that it's a patriarchal community. So then what? So those are some of the things that we start thinking about when you're looking at design thinking. So what are the stages of design thinking? So the first stage is to empathize. Design thinking is a process. The first stage of design thinking is you empathize. So you think about the process and then gain an empathetic understanding of the problem you're trying to solve. This will involve consulting your users to find out more about their day-to-day experiences through observing, as well as immersing yourself in the physical environment so that you can get a deeper personal understanding. Empathy will allow design thinkers to set aside their own assumptions about the world in order to gain insights into the user needs. And because in my screen, I'm seeing two people proactively, so maybe Valentine, please switch on your mic and just tell us slightly about your project, a project that you're working on currently.
Okay, it's not exactly a project. I'll just give a brief description on how my organization works.
Mm-hmm.
It's basically a youth center where we help children children who have been brought up in a children's home to reintegrate successfully back to their communities. So our main project is to ensure when you're removing them, when they're exiting their life from the children's homes, once they get to 18, when they come to us, we prepare them to be independent individuals and to be able to integrate safely first, because for them to go to a children's home, there had to be something from home. So it's more or less like a balance between them getting to know themselves individually and also getting to understand how the world out here works, and getting to build back the bond they lost when they lost with the family when they got into the children's home. So it's a combination of building them holistically, that's emotionally, psychologically, mentally, emotional, academic-wise. So right now, currently, we are focusing more on their academics and their emotional, being able to fight back the trauma, the trauma they've been having ever since they were children, whatever they faced in the children's home, and to be able to overcome the trauma they might end up meeting once they go back to their homes. So a combination of several things all in one.
Okay, great. So Valentine, the follow-up question, and yeah, the art of asking questions is always also a process of design thinking. So I have a follow-up question. You've said that you're helping them, you have all these needs you've listed: academic, emotional, trauma, etc. My question is, how did you arrive at this? How did you arrive at the conclusion that children who've been brought up in a children's home have all these needs? How did you arrive at that conclusion, for example?
When I was studying social work, I had an opportunity to work for different organizations. And my realization was especially, okay, we have a tendency as people to be visiting children's homes and we give out food, we give out clothes. But I came to realize all the children's homes I've ever visited, they never really have that one-on-one with each child to understand their emotional imbalance or to even bring out from them, when we brought the child to this home, what exactly forced the child to leave where they were from. And I also realized that once they get to 18 years, according to the Kenyan, especially the children's law, they're supposed to leave the children's home, but no one guides them through the process of, I am leaving a place I have been closed in, and no one ever guides them. Once I leave this place, so how do I survive?
Yeah, so you've answered, but you still, so what you're saying is, if I hear you right, you're saying that you made assumptions that out of observation. So when did you observe when people went to children's homes, you observed and you're like, oh, they usually go take for them bread, for them clothes, but nobody ever talks to them to understand maybe their social needs.
This is what I got now from the children we usually get from the program, and other children that I've been able to meet outside there. They're like, I wish when I was in the children's home, this and this would be told to me so that I can be able to make a life outside here. So we are more or less trying to cover the gap that the children themselves said they felt.
Okay, so this is when you're interacting with them, they came and they spoke to you about it.
Yeah.
Then you saw it.
Yes.
Okay, so I think, Valentine, that's exactly what design thinking is. But what we are saying is it needs to be more directed, because you came from a place of empathy and you spoke to the users, or in this case, you spoke to the children who you felt had this particular problem. So you had an assumption in your mind, and then you went back to them, and then you asked them, or they said to you that these are the things that need to be, these are the things that need to be, you know, we feel like these are the things that we also need. Other than the things that people are bringing for us, we feel that this is what the other things people need. And exactly that's what design thinking is. It's a process of empathy. It is a process, and I think you've also explained what design thinking is not. So design thinking is not the way you rightfully put it, Valentine. We sit somewhere and you assume the need of a child in a children's home is clothing and food. And then we go out and we put up a massive fundraiser, and then we deliver for them food and clothes, you know, and they already have shelter, but nobody has ever stopped to ask them, how do you feel about being here, you know? So maybe if you ask this child, they will tell you, I would rather even just somebody gives me a hug, na sinilete chakula, you know, something like that, you know, or this child will tell you something like, I would rather mtu tu akuje nichukue and nipeleke for a ride to the park, you know, other than bringing for me food. So you go to the user, you want to speak to the user. And at times the needs you're providing is not what the needs of the child is, for example, in your case, you know, and that's the reason now maybe you have gone ahead to really start this organization. So maybe in your case, Valentine, with this knowledge, you might want to start documenting. Like, for example, do you document how many, for example, how many children have you worked with so far since you started?
Roughly 300.
Okay, so let's say 300. Out of those 300, on a spreadsheet, what is their urgent need? So have you ever conducted a research or documented to say, out of education, emotional, etc., the top ranking need is Y?
Emotional.
Is it documented, or did you assume?
No, it's not an assumption per se. As a social worker, I'm supposed to go, I'm supposed to interview each and every child and try as much as possible to cover what they need, to understand what they need. So from all those that I interviewed, one thing that came out clearly was these kids needed more of emotional support, and then now the rest to come following up. Because, this is also not an assumption. How do I say? Okay, when you do a research and then you end up coming up with another observation, it's something else that I noticed. as an organization, even though we are to give them their educational needs or any other needs, as long as their emotional needs are not met or we've not overcome the trauma in the first place, the rest of the things will just be a passing phase and it won't help them. So it's more or less research and observation as well.
Yeah. So I think that's a very good example you painted, Valentine, and I hope everybody is really taking note. So really that process is what is called the process of empathy. So it requires for you to go and even at times live with these people, interact with them like Valentine did, speak to them about their needs, get to know what their real needs are. And that's what empathy is. So that's the first process of design thinking. So are you interacting with your users? Are you asking questions? And Valentine, actually, in research, assumptions are very good because you can make assumption A, and then now the reason you're going to validate is, you go with your assumptions, but then design thinking now helps you arrive at the real needs. So for example, you might have been assuming their needs is clothing, food, and shelter. But when you went to the field or you started interacting with these individuals or the children, you realize their needs are wider. Other than this, in terms of priority, then their needs are wider. And that's the reason you formed your organization. And I think if you look at, and those are some of the things how NGOs and CBOs transition. So I think the first note that everybody really needs to think about is to really paint a picture of the people or the audience you're working with. So have your assumptions like we said are good. So maybe maybe the first assumption is for the lady who's running the project in Pokot, is these women require XYZ. So list all your assumptions, and then the next step that you want to do is to go and have a sitting with these women, for example, and then now start asking them, either of course not everybody can respond to a questionnaire, but it could even be verbal, it could be observation, it could be all that, At this stage, once you've done your assumptions, you put together the information that is gathered during the empathy stage. And I think, Valentine, you've given us a good example. You put all the information and then analyze your observations and synthesize them in order to define the core problem. So you've gone, you've observed, you've done everything like you did, Valentine, and then you said, the core problem is emotional, this, that. You rate them in a hierarchy. So maybe out of the 20 children you interacted with, 18 of them confirmed that they actually needed emotional support. So then you arrive at the core problem, but it's driven by the observations that you found when you started interacting and empathizing with the users. And then at this stage, you look to define a problem statement. So the problem statement is, it could be, like you said, Valentine, 80% of the children who come from children's home require or lack emotional support, for example. At this stage, you're encouraged to start generating ideas based on your understanding of the users and their needs. So it could be now the programs that you're running, it could be the things that you're integrating, but everything is now being driven by the needs of the consumer or the user. In this case, for example, in Valentine's case, it's the children who are transitioning from children's homes back into the community. The observations that you made in the definition stage that the user needs have been well understood, and now you're ready to start generating ideas. You and your team can start identifying new solutions to the problem statement and explore alternative ways of viewing the problem. How might we questions apply here? Herbert, is your internet stable now? I think you are struggling to connect. I was seeing you connecting for some time. If it's stable, please switch on your mic and tell us a bit about your projects. Is Herbert with us?
Yes, I am.
Oh, super, Herbert.
Personally, I'm in the construction.
Okay, go ahead, Herbert.
I'm in the construction industry. And before we start our projects, the first thing we do is we go and we do the public participation, where we interact with the end users. You get to know their challenges, you get to understand what are their expectations. You
Mm.
get to understand their own layman solutions to
Mhm.
the kind of problems they're facing.
Mhm.
And then from there, we move into, now we bring in our technical expertise to help solve their problems. If it is, let's say, a structure they want done, now we come up with our expertise, but bearing in mind the challenges that they presented, their layman solutions that they presented.
So, for
And
example,
that
Herbert,
yes, yes.
what are some of the challenges that your users have presented?
If I may use an example, you go to a place and they need a market shed. They don't have the market structure. They just hawkers, or maybe just mama mboga trying to make ends meet. And so they need a structure to cover them from the weather effects. Now, when you go to them, they tell you, we need this structure at this given point because this is where we meet our customers. But then again, you have to share with them the legal aspects. Maybe they're next to a road reserve. You have to let them know that at this point won't be possible because there's a road reserve. But then now you have to understand how do you balance the legal aspects and also their needs so that they're able to meet their clients at the right point. So we agree with them that this can't be done here, but what about if we do it on the other end? So we brainstorm on how will that decision affect their way of doing business, and should it happen that that is the best place that our minds agree on, then we go ahead and do a design that favors their needs. There are also instances you find that we decide to do some maybe workshops for them. They always do their stalls. Yeah, so we want to do some workshops for them where they're able to arrange their wares and all that. They'll tell you, no, don't place them in this manner, because if you place them in this manner, I won't be meeting my clients. Someone will be having an added advantage over my stall and all that. So we put our minds together to ensure that whatever we will design on a technical aspect meets their specific needs and also suits their day-to-day activities.
Okay, yeah, so I like that example. So Herbert, this is where now, after you've gone through, you've empathized with the user, the next stage is to start generating ideas. And when you go back to the how design thinking will help you when you go back maybe to your place of work, is you might start asking questions around how might we help? Because you've gone and you've found Maureen, you found Sarah, you found Adem, who are the mama mbogas within the market. So when you go back to the office or you go back to your team, the question of how might we help Maureen have a competitive, because what she wants is visibility, right?
Yeah.
And she feels that if you do this, I won't be seen by other people. So the question you might start asking yourself is, how might we make mama mbogas visible? All of them in one line, for example. So you go back to the office and you start validating these ideas. You start generating ideas, but driven by questions. So in design thinking, we encourage you to ask all possible questions. You see the way now, mama mbogas will tell you, I want to be seen, I want to be covered, I want to be, all those things that they said. So you go back and you switch them in question form. How might we help roadside vendors become visible? How might we help roadside vendors, for example, mitigate the risk of flight because they are next to a road reserve? So those are some of the questions that you start asking. And at this stage is where you write all possible questions. How might we solve this problem? And then you move to the next phase, which is, thank you, Herbert, for sharing and allowing us to share your business. The team starts working on the problem. You'll produce a number of local scaled versions of the product or service with specific features found within the product to examine the problem. So your product is now already starting to take the form of being designed to meet specific needs. And these needs would be, Mama Mboga wants a shed. Not only does she want a shed, she wants a shed that is not going to is going to make her be on the front line. So then that means you'll have to maybe consider a flat surface. So those are some of the things that now you start altering the product features so that you can be able to meet the specific demand. Otherwise, you just go and you say, hey, I've created this thing, and then you have all those assumptions, and then there's a rejection. And I strongly believe most of us have lived to see things that were created and people never utilized. I don't know if you've seen idle resources. I know of some, like these malls that were once upon a time, I think 5 years till now, there's a whole mushrooming, there was a whole rush around people creating malls for middle class and upper class, and now the malls are empty. So, I keep on asking if maybe these people had gone or started thinking about design thinking and involve the users, maybe the malls will not be, but maybe they made a lot of assumptions at that stage. So it's at this stage where you create different variations of the product. I don't know if you can hear me. Just thumbs up if you can hear me.
We can hear you, Mama.
Super. Okay, because somebody had said, so I'll keep on checking in just in case my internet fluctuates. So you keep on now creating the product and putting, altering the product features. Actually, this is where features come in so that it suits the real need of the customers or the users you have in mind. And then, of course, the team, and here at this stage, we always encourage for you to do small alterations, small pilot with, small populations, go back to the user, ask them these questions, and then go back to the team and continue creating. Stella, would you like to say anything? Oh, okay. Your mic went off. That's fine.
Thank you very much. It was a struggle to join, but I'm very happy to finally have made it, and I'm hoping to learn a lot. I'm a project manager at the hospital, and I'm hoping that this will add more expertise in my place of work, and especially even in my future jobs. Thank you.
All right. Thanks, Stella. Thanks for plugging in. So at this stage is where you start prototyping, and what you encourage also design thinking is once, for example, Herbert, you already have your drone, your drawings. You can always go back to the same mama mbogas and ask them, get their input, get their ideas, and then go back and design, and then maybe design your first prototype. And then once that the prototypes may be shared and tested within the team or in smaller groups out of the team, and then the whole idea is you're aiming to find the best solution for each of the problems that had been identified. The solution can be accepted, improved, re-examined, or rejected based on your user experience. And that's the whole concept of consistently evolving, but always have the user in mind. And in this case, what you're encouraging, as opposed to coming to ask Maureen or your friends or your colleagues or other engineers or contractors, what do you think about this? Always take back the consumer back, the product or the service back to the consumers. Yeah. And then, of course, at this stage, the team will test the complete product or service using the best solutions identified during the prototyping phase. And then the final stage, however, the results generated in the final phase are often used to redefine one or more problems and inform understandings of the users. Alterations are also acceptable, but it's also a continuous process. And this is the reason why design thinking is critically important, because it is also important for you to know that, be aware that once you solve the initial problem, the other problem will come up. So innovation is also very critical here, because if, for example, and I'll give an example of maybe Herbert's project. So once Herbert goes and they form these stalls in the market, now the mama mbogas have shades. The mama mbogas have a place where they are being visible. The mama mbogas have all those things that they had initially wanted. If you go back and interact with them, you will find another problem. Now they will tell you maybe something like, now we are working longer hours, we might need lighting. So the whole idea is to consistently interrogate the problem. So using the same process, you go back, even after you've taken the solution, it's always important to consistently check with the audience or the users or the clients if this product is meeting the needs, and that is how products evolve. products and services also evolve, and that is what keeps you competitive in the market. Yeah, so those are some of the things. So maybe even the mama mbogas now, because they are happy, they are good, they are selling, they will start saying, oh, now maybe we need toilets, or maybe we need a savings in, because you really made for us these stalls, and they're nice and they're good. So now maybe they'll say, we're generating more income and you want a savings platform. So you have to consistently evolve or interact with your consumers to see if your product is consistently solving their day-to-day products or problems, and are you able to evolve the product into meeting their needs. So of course, alterations and consistent feedback is encouraged at design thinking, especially because we are dealing with humans who their needs change. So, and I think also if you look at Valentine's example, the need for a child at 17 is very different from when they're 18. And I think that's why Valentine is saying, when they were initially, before they went to the children's home, maybe their problem was food, clothing, and shelter. Then that was provided. And then after that, their needs evolved to be emotional needs. And maybe if you interacted with this child when they didn't have a home, their top of list priority will be, I just want a place to put my head. I want food every day. I want clothes. I want to be given warmth. And then they got all these things. And then they realized, suddenly there's another need that pops up, which is emotional support. So that's how products continue evolving or services continue evolving. And this can only be identified if they're consistently looking out, or you're consistently interacting with your customers to get feedback. Any questions? Any questions up to there? Noella?
No, we okay. I'm okay.
Okay. Tobias, you've unmuted yourself. Do you have a question?
Okay.
Shall we do the breakout rooms, miss?
Yes, please.
Okay.
Maybe, did you share with them the breakout rooms and how that will look like?
No.
Okay, maybe you can give a...
Yeah, we can do that right now. For some
Okay.
very strange... I don't
Adem,
see...
you're on mute.
Oh, sorry. I don't see breakout rooms on my end. Oh, sorry. False alarm. So this is what's going to happen, ladies and gentlemen, because we have the next 30 minutes between now and our break to practically implement these classes on design thinking. Then we'll take a break, then come back for the project management version of this class. So what we're going to do in the breakout rooms, your instructor is going to give you a prompt, and I'm going to divide us into different breakout rooms. And what you're going to be doing in these breakout rooms is practically design thinking your way around the one problem that you have. Then between the instructor and myself, we'll be sliding in and out of those rooms to just answer questions and give guidance through the process of design thinking. What we want you guys to be able to have from this process is to have a practical understanding of how do you break down a problem statement into actionable insights, and how the kind of questions that go into the how might we's. So I'm thrilled to be able to have this done. So in a few minutes, I will have all of you guys, and I'll just assign you guys automatically. Okay. And yeah, so I'm going to create 2 breakout rooms just to allow people to just do the thing. Okay, so yeah, you guys, see you. We'll do it within 20 minutes, then come in for the next 10 minutes to just discuss insights that we have learned. Okay, but Amakabane, would you want to give insights so that people know what to do once they are launched into the breakout rooms?
Yes, so really the idea of breakout rooms is to go into smaller cohorts and try and be as practical as you can with your business or your concept or whatever you're running. So the idea is to absorb what we have just gone through and then ask questions in relation to what you're currently undertaking, or how, very, very practical and specific questions. So it's
Okay.
going to be interactive. And then, of course, like you're saying, my role with them is to really guide the process, but you're really anticipating to hear more from you than from us.
Absolutely. So shall they choose one problem per room, or should they focus on their own personal business?
So as you're going into the room, think about one problem so that it's now discussed in detail, so that we can take this problem and walk it through a design thinking process.
Okay.
So one problem because of the time frame as well.
Okay, so we will choose one problem faced based on one of the participants in the room, perhaps, preferably someone who's not already been featured in Amakabana's examples. Then the team was going to ideate and design think around that specific thing. So ready to rock and roll. Good. I am going to, I am going to, Maureen, you are going to in room 1. I am going to slide into room 2. So guys, if I send you an invite to join a room, please join a room, okay? I'm just going to admit one more person who's going to also join the room. So we have 8 participants per room. So this is going to be exciting. So open rooms, and I'd like to see you guys join. Good. Tobias and Michael, please join your rooms. Michael, I am going to assign you to room number 2. Tobias, I encourage you to join a room. Okay. Good. Broadcast rooms. Room 1, room 2. Tobias and Michael, please join the rooms. Heavily encouraging you to join the rooms and whatnot. So good. More. How do I join a room? Breakout rooms. Okay. Share screen, participants. More. This is okay. How do I join a room? Chats, cut messages to all. Hi everyone, I do not see anyone speaking, or have I stepped into quiet? It's really quiet in here. So which problem are we working on and how do we ideate around it? Okay, Stella came in late, she's not sure. Okay, so we're going to go with one of your problems, okay? Habat, you joined in late, so I'm going to also give you the option of giving us your project, whatever project you're working on. Which project are you working on, Habat? You can unmute yourself and answer. Habat, are you there? Okay, we will go with Stella. Tell us, what problem are you working on and can we ideate around it? Stella, let me know if you can hear me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, but I'm not sure if to address the real problem that I'm working on where I am working, or would I just compose a problem then we work around it?
We can, but if you want us to work around a real problem that you're actually having, that will be perhaps more beneficial at work.
Okay, I'm working around disability and accessing, having persons with disability accessing health, inclusive health. So yes, that's the problem we're working on.
So disability.
I'm sorry, I'm in a not very clear place. I'm in a noisy place. I'm traveling.
Okay.
So I might do most of the typing rather than speaking.
Okay, so but just to check in, you're in the disability and health rights space, right?
Yes, yes.
Okay, thank you for that, Stella. So guys, if you remember what Ama Kabane has just mentioned about the process of design thinking, the first thing is empathizing, right? So how about we start? Thank you, Michael, for finally being able to join into this meeting. We have 9 minutes, guys, so we have to come up with we have to do this very fast. And if you can unmute yourself or type in the chat box, that'll be remarkably helpful. Okay, good. So ladies and gentlemen, when you're talking about disability and health rights, okay, what is the first step when we are discussing the thing about how do we ideate and prototype around it? The first step is empathizing, okay? So what are some of the things we will do to put ourselves in the shoes around people with disability as a way of figuring out how do we observe the problems they have when it comes to health? Valentine, you're already unmuted, so I'm going to go with you. What are some of the things that you think we can do to empathize in their position? Go on.
When you're talking about disability, it's quite broad. Is it like, we're going to focus on a specific type of disability, or are we going to focus it as a whole? Because let's say, for example, if we focus on those who can't walk, the kind of need they have is not similar to someone who can't see. So I just wanted to understand, are we going to deal with disability as a whole, or are we going to specify in one?
Okay, this is about disability and health. So how about we go with people who can't walk, because it's an easier version of this conversation. So how do we deal with the health rights of people with disability who can't walk, for instance?
Okay, for one, can they be able to access the basic health facilities? Just basic.
Okay. Perpetua has typed, we can't make any assumptions. We may need to use user interviews to understand the challenges with the healthcare system. That is good. But remember, you're jumping the gun. The very first step is empathizing, okay? Which means consultation and talking to them is part of it. But how are some of the ways that we can also observe their day-to-day or and whatnot and see how the health thing comes in? Guys, we have around 7 minutes. So if we are able to move a bit faster, they will be wonderful. Ideas. Edwin, Daniel, Habat, tell us, what are some of the ways to empathize with people with disability and observe them? Michael, you're unmuted yourself. Give us ideas.
Okay. Cindy,
Yes.
when we say, okay, during the emphasizing stage,
Yeah.
I think what I took was interacting with the users. So meaning we can maybe start interacting with particular group and just observe.
Okay.
You know, how are they able to access healthcare centers and what are the challenges they have? I think that will give us some assumption of what is happening before maybe spending time with them.
Okay, thank you for that. Noella, you had unmuted yourself as well. What did you want to add in the empathizing stage?
Okay, thank you. I also think it's very important to put ourselves in the, okay, what I mean here is, for instance, in some communities, we have to identify the kind of community that we are carrying out this project, for example, of identifying people who are living with disability, the LEM, because all I know is in some communities, for instance, these people are usually hidden. They are not brought, they are not allowed to interact. Women go and hide their children because of some cultural aspect of maybe somebody with disability is a cast child. So maybe before we even, so in identifying these people would be a bit, would need some more practical ideas, because maybe, for instance, if you're working in this market A, we'll just be thinking that there's only one woman who has a child who is disabled. So would need further interrogations to know how many of them are we really certain that you're only dealing with one particular mother who has a child who is lame, or this mother is lame, or maybe by now observing and immersing ourselves into the situation, we'll come now to realize that even Mama X and Mama C has a child who is disabled, but they don't want to bring it. They don't want it to be known because they are afraid of maybe 1, 2, 3. So maybe in the first stage that we need to know is to understand the environment, to know how many of these women have children who live with disability, and then also by consulting people around, maybe they have seen this lady. So that is what I think.
Thank you for that, Noella. That's a very comprehensive thought process. Stella, your idea? I see you've raised your hand. Okay. Engaging, Stella, do you want to unmute yourself, or should I just read this? Engaging the DPOs in every stage. Will you want to that? Okay, you've unmuted yourself.
Okay, thank you very much. I think empathy goes as deep as ensuring that we don't make assumptions of what persons with disabilities are facing out here. And so to understand it better, we can't just assume that these are their needs. So we have to engage persons with disability in our projects as stakeholders, even from the beginning of the project, from the concept bit, so that we can understand what their problems, because we can come here thinking as people without disability that maybe their first need will be healthcare, accessing healthcare, and perhaps according to them, they think the first need, or they feel like the first need for them, or the pressing need is perhaps something, say, accessibility of spaces.
Yes.
Our physical accessibility. Maybe we don't have ramps in buildings or something such a things, and as well as ensure that the language we use around them like calling them someone has just said, maybe lame, or just an example, ensuring that it doesn't hurt them in the spirit of being empathetic. So the language we use around them at least is friendly, and it goes well with them. That I thought. I'm not sure, I came in late, so maybe I am out of context, but that's what I can say about that.
You're not out of context. So, but the first step, what you've said, is empathizing, and that's a very good first step. And perhaps before we move on to the other steps very quickly, the next step is perhaps just volunteering at a center for people with disabilities. Then you get to see how they interact with the world around them when it comes to accessing healthcare. What happens if they're unwell? What happens if they're sick? You cannot create something out of your own head. You have to go down to the people that you're working with to just observe, to integrate yourself within their lives and seeing, okay, so this is how they live. When they wake up, this is what they do. This is how they get out of bed. This is how they attend the clinic. If they have a clinic session, these are the challenges along the steps of the way. So that's a very fast step. And we have around 5 minutes to do this. So we are going to go quite quickly, okay? Michael, you're saying moving slower. We are on the fast step, Michael. So we're going to go to the next step, defining. So this is the place where we get all the information that we've considered when we are observing our users. And in this case, this is how we bring in all the ideas together. Okay, we say, okay, in the 1 week or the 1 month that I have been engaging with our users, you know, this is what I've observed. This is what I have observed. When they wake up, they get out of bed, for example, and they struggle to maybe go to the washroom, for instance. Or when they're feeling they have a headache, for instance, they are trying to struggle with, should I go to a hospital or should I call a healthcare person? Or will I send someone to go and buy me medication? And then when they are going about work, if they fall down, they either have to call someone to come pick them up, or they have to find a way of scrambling around themselves. So with all these observations, you bring them together to the table and you figure out what is the one thing that all these things have in common. Guys, I want you guys to, for example, give me, I don't know how we can do this with making just exclusively assumptions about what we can define, but I'm going to jump back to Stella on this specific example. Stella, if you can tell us, in your line of work, what was the one thing that you noticed that was common among people with disabilities when it comes to accessing healthcare? The one thing. If you can unmute yourself, that will be very helpful in helping us narrow down the scope of this conversation. Yeah.
Again, one common problem that runs across persons with disability, especially those with physical disability, is the fact that some of them can't access the assistive devices, maybe the wheelchairs, the crutches, such are things. And accessing places, maybe the places that they go, they are not friendly, maybe there are no ramps. You could find in a building, there are no lifts, or they are only using staircases. So you find it difficult for these past people. They can't access places when they want to do things independently. They have to depend on someone to assist them, because the assistive devices or the spaces that we have around our country are not very accessible in terms of accessibility or physically or whatever the buildings, how the buildings are set. That is, those are 2 points. Then there is an issue about cultural beliefs and norms, where some of the people think that it's a curse to have a disability, and so that affects their self-esteem. So you have to deal with it again emotionally and psychologically. So you have yourself, you have more people, they have not accepted their state in terms of disability and in terms of what disabilities they have. So they have psychological issues that some of them, it runs across the accessibility issues and the bit that they have to depend on people for movement, or in terms of movement. Then policies again in Kenya, they don't favor them, because sometimes you will find that the inclusivity is a problem. Inclusivity is a problem in terms of employment, in terms of accessibility, again, in terms of engagement. So it becomes a little bit difficult, and sometimes people think that it is a challenge. It is quite a challenge for them to access some of the roles, duties, responsibilities, positions in our country. Yes, those are some of the common things that I found in line of duty.
Okay, thank you so much for that, Stella. So in short, we want to focus on one problem, okay? And we'll come up with the one statement. And the statement will be like, how might we XXX so that XXCX, okay? So and I'd want ideas from you guys on how some of the problems that Stella has just mentioned, either inclusive spaces and whatnot, because this is the question that we will be using to come up with the ideas that will help us move forward. Michael, I see your yes is typed out, so I do not know whether that yes you're agreeing or you just clicked the wrong button, okay? But I want us to, we have like less than 60 seconds. We will have a more comprehensive version of this the next Saturday, because we will be having the comprehensive version of project management on Saturday as well. So I want to challenge us to come up with a project, with a problem statement. How might we XYZ, or how might we blah, blah, blah. So Stella has mentioned a couple of problems. One, accessing buildings. The other problem was self-esteem. The other problem was policy, okay? Remember, this is what we're trying to solve is disability and access to healthcare. So what are some of the problem statements that we can develop to ideate around this problem? And I'm going to leave Stella aside for now, and I'm going to challenge the rest of us to come up with one problem statement, and I'm going to go along with everyone in this room. So everyone has to come up with at least one problem statement for the problem Stella mentioned. So Valentine, you're first on my list. What problem statement would we come up with for this? It has to start with how might we, and so that, yeah.
How might we overcome the myths and stereotypes that face persons living with disabilities in accessing basic health facilities?
So that there has to be a so that.
So that they can feel more included into the community without being patronized about their situation.
Okay, that's a very good problem statement. That's a very good start. Celestine, you're next. What's a problem statement we can develop in relation to what Stella has mentioned?
Hello.
Hi, you're there.
Hello. Oh, hi, Adam. Okay, I was looking at it in this manner. Maybe we can start with the end in mind. Okay. Let's say from the health care system to this person with the disability. Is there a way they can find accessibility in terms of, let's say, if these people want to access medication, can there be a particular office set aside for them to be able to get the medication directly to their houses, as opposed to them having to come all the way to the health center to actually collect these drugs, for those who cannot be able to make it completely to the health facility, something like that? I was looking at it in having the end in mind, in that from the health center to the person with disability, as opposed to dealing with the person with disability heading to the health center. So I'm looking at it in such a way that the health center can then identify that there's this person who would need this particular function done to them, and then they take and they get an effort of having to deliver this particular medication to this person with disability, or whatever thing that they need to be delivered to them. I was looking at it that way.
Okay, so Celestine, you're going to the idea generation stage. Right now, we are developing a problem statement. Okay. So
okay. So
how might we, so that blah blah blah. Yeah. How might we blah 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 so that blah 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 in one statement.
Okay. So could you give me a minute to generate?
Okay, not a problem.
It as we move to the next person, kindly.
Absolutely.
Hello. Yeah. All right. Thanks.
Noella, it's your turn. What's your how might we statement?
I don't know if, okay, I'm giving a trial.
Okay, we are all trying here.
Okay, so maybe we go like, how might we strengthen the capacities of people living with disability in order to advance their interest, in order to advance their interest in, oh no, I'm messing up. Okay, so how might we strengthen the capacity of people living with disability in order to access universal health care?
Okay, thank you for that. It's a really good start. Okay, although strengthen capacity is wide, but there are no bad ideas here. Okay, it's a good one. I'm not saying it's a bad one, but that's a good start, beginning to a problem statement. Perpetua, you're next on my list. What's your how might we statement?
I think I would say, how might we streamline the healthcare system so that people with disabilities feel more included and served?
Okay, it's supposed to be the other way around because the focus is on people with disabilities, but that's still a good start because the next steps are usually how do you narrow down from the ideating to something a bit more narrowed down. But that's a great start, Perpetua. Thank you. Herbert, you're next. What's your how might we statement?
I was trying to look at it from the point of how might we improve access to healthcare by PWD to ensure inclusivity in healthcare. Basically that, I don't know whether I'm missing anything on that.
So generally, how might we statement, the very first part has to start with the target group, okay, because that's the people that we are mostly focusing on, okay. Then the healthcare lead comes towards the end, okay. But what you and Perpetua said are essentially the same thing. But thank you for the attempt. Daniel, we need to go on a break in around 1 minute, but I'd like to hear what both of you have to say about the how might we. So Daniel, what's your how might we statement?
So how might we be able to mitigate accessibility barriers so that persons with disabilities
Sorry?
Healthcare centers.
Say that again. How might we?
How might we? Okay, I'm saying I'm on the road. Sorry.
Okay, I understand.
How might we be able to? How might we be able to mitigate accessibility, mobility barriers?
Yeah.
So that persons with disabilities are able to access healthcare centers or whatever needs they want to access.
Okay, that's also a good place to start because the next step in design thinking are about narrowing it down. So last but not least, Edwin. What's your how might we statement?
Yes, my how might we statement is how might we improve the design of hospitals and healthcare centers so that they are easily accessible and friendly to people living with disability.
Okay, that's a great how might we statement, okay? Because from there, we're all able to now narrow down to the specifics, okay? So I'm going to close out all rooms. Thank you for everyone for participating. We are going to be going on around a 10-minute break. Then we will come back and we will have a brief recap of this breakout rooms and then call it, then go into project management after the break. So yes, we are all going to the main room first, then we will be back. Great. Thank you everyone for coming in. I think we have mostly everyone back. So ladies and gentlemen, it's important that we take a health break for the next 10 minutes. So we are coming back at 10:42. Then we will have a slight recap of this session before we jump onto design thinking. Amakabane, is there something you wanted to say before we go on a break?
Not really.
Okay.
Let's just take a break and then let's be back at 10:42 and then we'll jump into project management.
Okay.
See you at 10:42.
Okay. See you guys in 10 minutes.
I think I was really continue. Let's go back. I hope you can see my screen.
Yeah.
Great.
Yes, we can see your screen. Good.
You know, as children, in my generation, and I think you can tell my age, there were all these cartoons that we'd watch, and these cartoons would, you know, people would be teleported. I don't know, I think it was either Superman, I think it was Superman. You'd enter into this cylinder and you'd disappear somewhere, whatever it was. And I really kind of feel that that's what the digital transformation has shown us, where you're being zapped into a room, I don't know, taken where, I don't know, the breakout rooms. And that's quite exciting. And recently there was a mime that did rounds where I think one of those, I think it was Archie and Sabrina or something. It was a comic we used to read as children. And Archie was, you know, like maybe 20 years ago, Archie was having her class on a computer. And the parents were like, oh, this is what will happen in the next 20 years. And actually it's come to happen that now we are doing our sessions online. And it's interesting that now the digital frontier is really right on our faces. So even as we go through this phase or the next project in terms of project management, think about how you can even transition your projects online. You know, like research, interaction and engagement with the consumers. Are you on a WhatsApp platform? Do you have your consumers, for example, on a WhatsApp platform? Are they in a Facebook group? Just simple things like that will really be able to help us catalyze and more engagements. So the objectives for these sessions, we're going to really look at cycle application and planning. And then of course, you're going to examine the scope. And then, of course, we're going to look at realistic goals because it's also important to set goals. And then we start identifying, are you able to identify the key deliverables in a project? I hope my screen is still visible.
Your screen is visible.
Okay, super.
Yes.
So there's project management, and then there's a project cycle, which you're going to be covering. So really, project is a risk that has been identified and needs to be managed within a specific time and using specific resources or costs. So that's where you stand. And the reason I'm putting a risk, defining it with an inclusion of risk, it is because whether you're setting up an NGO, whether you're setting up a CBO, whether you're setting up a business, whether you're setting up an initiative, there's a risk element. So because the reason I defining it from a risk perspective, that you know that you're constantly every day trying to mitigate or minimize the risks, because there's a possibility of it not going the way you had planned or it just failing. So it's good to just have that at the back of your head, and project management tools help you in terms of trying to mitigate the risks. So as a project manager or potential project managers or people who are already running active NGOs and CBOs, it's important for you to constantly know that your day-to-day management skills require that you manage and understand the risk from this perspective. So it can also be defined as an activity or activities focused on solving a specific problem within a specific time and a specific place, a planned set of interested tasks to be executed over a fixed period of time with certain costs and other limitations. So those are the broad definitions, and you can really see which one you want to run with. But I personally like the first one. I like the first one because when I know it's a risk, then I know that my responsibility is just beyond running the project, it's also mitigating the risk. There are definitely tools and skill sets and knowledge and resources that can help us achieve the project within a specific time. And then what are the processes? How do you plan? How do you organize? How do you coordinate and control the project effectively and efficiently from the start to the end so that you can achieve your pre-designed objectives? And remember, of course, when we started talking about design thinking, we are encouraging you to start understanding the problems so that, of course, by the time you're going into the project phase or implementation phase, you already have a potential user in mind or a potential audience. So to design your desired outcome, ask the following question: who do I really want to address in this project? Who am I speaking to? So once you answer that question, which you've already started asking when you're doing the design thinking, then this is where you come and you really answer that question specifically. In our small record group, we went ahead to say you need to really define even the audience by age, by where they are. So for example, if you're working with mama mbogas, be as specific as possible. I've run a project with mama mbogas, and it was very clear. I was working with vegetable vendors in Embakasi in a specific area, right from one stretch to the other. It was well defined. And then the second question you want to ask yourself, what is the ultimate outcome that you want or result? Write that down. And then the third question is, where do you want the project situation to end up? Like, what do I envision? And I'll give an example of my sanitation company. So what do I want from the project? So for me, who do I truly want? What do I truly want from this project? So in the sanitation project, I really want schools to have better toilets and have dignified toilet solutions. What is the outcome? So the outcome is, in the next 10 years, I hope to have phased out pit latrines in a significant number of schools. And then where do I want the project to end up? So where do I see a world where, or a Kenya where even schools in the rural areas of Kenya will have access to proper toilets? Yeah. So be as clear as you can. And then how to design your desired outcome? So, identify the scope and understand the environment in which the project exists. So like for me, for example, it's very specific. I'm targeting schools, and then I've narrowed it down to specific schools. Like, I want to start this project in Western Kenya. And in West Kenya, I want to start this project specifically in a constituency called Luanda. And I already mapped out 25 schools, which I will have as my initial audience to really prototype the solution. So you identify, take the systematic approach to find out what problem are you providing a solution to? So for example, is it economic? Is it social? Is it a health? etc. And then group them accordingly. And remember, we already started looking at these things from our design thinking process. So what are the needs of the users? What is the problem? And what solution are you ultimately taking? So what is the problem? So you're constantly answering this part. How am I creating a solution that will fit the desired outcome, both for you and the users in mind? So you look, of course, at the holistic sector, and then you look at actions of the others. What are the other existing solutions? And then what is your specific solution to the organization? And then what is your project action? So like, for example, I'll give an example of, was it Linda, the lady who's providing emotional support to children who've been through a children's home. So of course, when Linda was talking, you could quickly tell that there's already a solution, a holistic solution in the sector. So we have a lot of interventions where children who don't have homes are already in children homes. So those are the actions that other people are taking. So some of the actions is we are delivering clothes, you are giving them food, you are educating them. And then now Linda comes in, or rather her organization comes in and says, we are going now to provide a specific solution, emotional support solution. And she went ahead and she even grouped them further. So, so you have to think about your project holistically, consider the other solutions and interventions within the space you're going into, and then now start plugging in the organization or the solutions that your organization has, and then now what are the implementation phases. So of course, it's important, extremely important to scope your environment. And I think also we had started having several examples where we had examples of somebody saying, we go to the mama mbogas and we understand the environment. So maybe they want a shed next to a road reserve. What are the implications of that? And that's very important. So you have to define your environment. What does it look like? Somebody said she's running a project in an extremely patriarchal, a women-led project in an extremely patriarchal society. Those are things that you have to be very cognizant of, because in the absence of you understanding your environment, you stand higher risks. What opportunities exist or favor you or favor your projects? So for example, in the example of the lady who's doing who's trying to work with women in a patriarchal society, you'll find that now there's affirmative action. There's already affirmative action, which is a national declaration. So that affirmative action declaration as a national state, as a national statement, already favors her project, which was not maybe the case 30 years ago. So 30 years ago, you not go to this community and start saying, hey, I am working to support women, because nobody will listen to you. Even there's not going to be any local support. If anything, you'd have been kicked out, So those are some of the examples. But now Kenya has an affirmative action as a national declaration, and this definitely favors. So it means that she will be protected by the chief or the local police, and she's not going to be harassed because she's holding a mkutano ya wanawake ama mkutano ya wamama. So you also have to understand what are the opportunities that exist that favor your projects, and also what doesn't work for you. What are the challenges and limitations of your project? So for example, the very fact that you're in a patriarchal society, it means that you might want to put you will have to put extra effort, so that you can be able to extra effort, meaning that you're cognizant to the fact that all these things are existing. And I was giving an example of why I exclusively started a platform only for moms. And it's because when I was doing my design thinking in the smaller group, I gave this example. When I was doing my why questions to the women in my community, most of them said that they want their husbands or their spouses feel that they embarrass them when they, when they do small businesses. So we had to create a very safe community or space that is exclusively for women, because their need of privacy, you want to run a business chini ya maji, so that, you protect your family reputation or your spouse reputation. So that was very critical. So if I didn't answer that question effectively, then the platform will not be as successful as it is. So it can be very, very small things like that really, really can limit your project. So imagine if I didn't really go through the design thinking phase, I would never have gotten this kind of response. Of course, what is the current situation? So what are the existing? Is it very hostile? Are there other interventions? And then what is your action? So have clarity in terms of the action that you have for your organization. And then of course, like you're saying, what is your desired outcome? So for me, for example, for my mom's community, the desired outcome is to have empowered women who have an extra source of income to complement their family, income. So very, very important, we should really be able to understand your stakeholders. And your stakeholders are inclusive, and it's important for you to understand your stakeholders, and let's define who a stakeholder is. So a stakeholder is a person or institution that has a same objective, which could help you implement a project or achieve an outcome with available resources. Stakeholders are also people affected directly or indirectly by the project, and those those of the interests which you're trying to influence. And again, I'll go back to my example of the digital platform community I created for my mom. Spouses were key stakeholders, men were key stakeholders, you know. So it was important to also understand what the men feel about their women trading, you know. So it helped me really design a very inclusive product that also factored in the needs or the concerns of the stakeholders, you know. And I gave another example. Even you, by the mere fact that Kenya has a national declaration of affirmative action is a great thing because government is a critical stakeholder. So it's also important for you to understand. And I think in the smaller group, we had a lady who's doing solar. They have I think a solar intervention or an alternative for electricity. So we are looking at, you know, I encouraged her to really also map out her stakeholders. So, you know, the questions you want to ask yourself so that you know which stakeholders to engage, because like, for example, in my case, I didn't need to engage government as a stakeholder, you know, so it is, you know, you need to ask these questions. Who ought to be part of the project? Who is likely to benefit? Who is not interested? In my case, some spouses are not interested. Who would oppose your project? Who is doing what I am doing? What do I want from them? What do they want from it? So those are the questions that you want to ask yourself. And then write the questions. And then once you understand, then you'll be able to map out your stakeholders. Yeah. And then, of course, what do you need from them? Let's see if I can play this video. Adam, am I supposed to play this video?
Oh, apologies. Sorry, I was speaking. No. No. So
okay.
Just stop sharing for a second. I think you're watching the wrong document, using the wrong document.
Okay.
Okay, just 1 second. So give me 1 second.
As Ademi is sorting that out, do you have any specific questions to in relation to project management?
I would especially like to hear what other people's, in the different projects that's in the group, what are some of the key stakeholders that surprised them, you know? Did you just think you're working with women or people with disabilities, then you realize that the kids are also stakeholders, the wives are also stakeholders? I'd really like to hear thoughts about that when it comes to stakeholder mapping. It's one of the most surprising things for me personally on all the projects that we're doing. Someone you think was very inconsequential suddenly has the power to stop whatever it is you're doing or you're building.
I'll share my experience. It's about the children in the children's home.
Yeah.
During one of the stakeholders meetings, because we usually have such kind of meetings every year to see whether we are going in the right direction when it comes to children, it was really surprising that when we were talking about stakeholders, everyone was talking about, oh, the children's office, the government, we need to bring in the governors, other organizations that are dealing with the kids. And in the long run, you're like, so we are doing all this for the sake of the children, but no one actually mentioned you still need to talk to that 5-year-old child, that 12-year-old child, because without their perspective, we are technically doing nothing. Because as you said, sometimes working with assumptions is good until you make that assumption a reality without actually verifying the truth. So in most scenarios, especially NGOs that actually deal with kids below the age of 18, they tend to sideline the children, and yet they're the biggest stakeholders when it comes to what they need in their lives. So until I got that into my head, like I have to know assumptions. You have to take into consideration even the smallest or the least person you would expect, because most of the time people will say, a 4-year-old, what can that child contribute? But you'll be surprised that 4-year-old can actually tell you something, and you're like, wow, why didn't I as an adult think of that? And yet they're 4 years old. So those are some of the challenges we have to face when you're trying to tell a counterpart who is working for a different organization that we can't make this decision without actually just hearing it from the kids themselves. Yeah.
Thank you so much for that. Thank you very much. And that's a very clear example of how some of the small things that we easily take for granted when it comes to project management is the one thing that influences how far or how fast, or if at all, a project moves forward. Who else can give us another example on things that surprised you? Noella, you've unmuted yourself.
Yeah, like I mentioned before, I am a Pokot and I come from the Pokot community. And I was so lucky that I managed to, when our presenter Maureen asked us what really inspired you to do this and this, I started this organization because I am a product of some of the harmful cultural practices that are done to women in my community. Yeah. So what inspired me to start this is because I said, no, girls will not have to go through what I went through when I was young. So that was my motivational factor. But coming back to your question, there are people that we assume that they should not be in our list of our stakeholders until recently when I realized, because this community, the men are the custodians of our cultures. So when I was starting this campaign, it's a very small CBO. But the small we are doing, I'm very impressed with it. But it was very hard for me to convince men to not let their girls be circumcised and married off when they are young. And because I started in 2019 October, so until last year is when I realized the men are the consumers of female genital mutilation. Like in my culture, girls must be cut for them to be women so that they can be married. When we were growing up, we were raised up in a society that as a woman, you must get cut and you must get married. A woman who is not married, you are not a woman. So I realized if, for instance, we can involve men to help us in the Men and FGM campaign, it would be a very great step, because if a man can say, my daughter will not get married, that girl will definitely not get cut. So these are people that, we call them the Moran, the traditional men, who now it is not easy to convince them to come on board and help us in the campaign, because they also have the aspect of preserving the culture. But at the moment, I have just come to realization that men are even the major stakeholders in the campaign against female genital mutilation and child marriages. So that is what now we are tackling. So we're starting with some of the few religious men that we know. We'll go to talk to other men, because for us, women can't address men. And then now from there, we'll now have men themselves saying, we are going to protect the girls from being cut. The other people, seriously, they are very important stakeholders. But until our realization was, men, the government can say this, but if our men, this is a society that you guys, maybe you don't know much about Pokot, but we are totally traditional. Like if our men says no, even the government, the chief will not say anything. But now I am envisioning a situation where the men themselves will come openly, go to radio and say, for me and my friend and my uncles and my brothers, we are not going to cut our girls. And for sure, that is my mission, that we are going to achieve what we are fighting for. Thanks.
Thank you so much for that. I can already feel all the passion you have for what it is you work with. And what I like about that is because it's easy for someone who's non-Pokot, who's crazy about ending FGM, to go up there in arms, ready to burn down cities, like FGM done, out, bad. But if you do not know who the real decision makers are, you will be going on a fool's errand, because some of these things are so deeply ingrained in people, in systems, in societies, that it is very important for us to be aware of what exactly are who exactly are the decision makers, and how do we sway the decision makers and stakeholders involved in that process. Can we have one more person who can tell us some of the stakeholders that surprised them? You thought your stakeholder was one person, but it turned out that your actual stakeholder included a much wider or a much more nuanced person. Anne, I see you've unmuted yourself. Do you want to say something?
Yes, in my experience, when it came to land acquisition, because they are the owners of land and they own the title deeds, yes. They don't have to involve the wife and the children.
Yeah.
And it turned out to be amazing, because now their wife and some of the landowners, their wives and their kids wanted to be involved. But in our case, we only wanted to deal with the landowner and the owner of the title deed. But it came out differently that some families insisted that they have to be involved. And through this, it was kind of delayed the process of land acquisition. And from this, I learned that even though we are dealing with the person who owns the title deed or the landowner, we also need to extend our participation to the other family members so that you can have their view, because maybe that land, or it is inherited. There are people who have shares in that land and we are not aware. So through this, we learned that we should also need to involve other family members so that we can have their view on when it comes to land acquisition.
Absolutely. And that's a very, very important thing. So here's the thing, ladies and gentlemen, we will also provide for you resources on downloadable resources on how do you mind map stakeholders. It's a very simple document that you can either print or you can access on your own, which can allow you with every single project you're working on or you're thinking to work on, you're able to see who are the stakeholders who are directly impacted, and in the wider circle, who is interested but not impacted, who has the power, who has the influence, even though it will not impact them directly and whatnot. All these resources will be available for you on our platform, and we will show you how to access them after the class. And for everyone asking, we are recording this session and you will find it afterwards. So please do not worry about it, okay? We've got you. So Maureen, you wanna take it back?
Yeah, thanks, Adem, for at least leaning in and asking those questions, because they're very paramount. And I think, the example that was given about involving men who are the custodians of culture, it's a very, very critical point, which is very important. So like, for example, if you're going into a community, we asked, who would oppose your project? And I think a lot of individuals who work within local communities, you start realizing the power of religious opinion leaders, or the what we like to call, or we refer to them as the custodians of culture, utamaduni. So like Adem said, you might do all these things and you really go back and you find yourself with just an egg alone. So these are the examples of stakeholders, and they include private sector. These are the entities that market, capital, and labor, and they include companies, manufacturing firms, businesswomen, entrepreneurs, sponsors, investors, and multinational. So really depending on the space you're in, these are the types of stakeholders. So we have civil society. So these are the people or entities that are hired by government to assist in fulfilling the work that they're meant to do. And then we have government, we have media, and we have science and academia. And also local communities play a very, very critical role in understanding who your stakeholders are. And even children, like for example, who are the, but these are just broad examples of stakeholders. But I like the fact that for the people who are actively running projects, they already have an idea of who their critical, stakeholders are. So like we said, once you get into this particular space, you're constantly looking at ideas on how to mitigate the risk. So that's part of critical, project risk management and risk analysis is a very critical, skill in project management. And I would like to really ask a question. So at least let's have two answers or two responses from the audience. What are some of the risks that you've experienced? Who'd like to share? Who'd like to share? Am I still here? Can you still hear me?
Yes, we can still hear you. Sarah has unmuted yourself.
Yeah.
I don't know if Sarah wants to say
Okay, Sarah, please. Sarah, go ahead.
Hey
Hey, sorry. Can you please come back?
Yeah, so we're just wondering, so what are some of the risks you've experienced?
Oh,
when running
in my area. Okay, so
yeah.
Even hello.
Yes,
oh,
we can hear you.
Adam, I don't know whether you heard me introduce my project. I know we're so familiar with Adam.
Yeah,
but may I start from the beginning? Yes. Or I just continue with my challenges?
Yeah, just
I can just continue, yeah?
Yeah, just so go straight ahead and give us an example of
the biggest challenge I find is that men only.
Wow. I can barely hear you.
Okay. The feeling that you're, what is it? Is it mudslinging for young women in politics? So most people think.
We can hear you, Sarah. Please keep going. You said mudslinging for young women in politics, right?
Hey, sorry, I have an issue with the connection. Hello? Someone, are you hearing me?
Yes, we
can you hear me?
Yes, so you can also type on the chat box, perhaps.
Yeah, yeah. Let me do that. Let me do that because I have an issue with the network. It's kind of disconnecting.
Thank you.
Okay. But I did get a part of you. I think you were saying that part of the challenges you face, and I think you're in a small group, and you're agitating for inclusion and encouraging young girls to take up leadership and politics. Yeah, so like you're saying, the risk is mudslinging, but the bigger risk here is reputation. So mudslinging comes with an element of reputation. So it's important for you to analyze that risk because you don't understand the risk involved. And these are some of the barriers, so analyzing the risk, for example, in your case, is important so that you can be able to have mitigating factors. So, and I like that example that you brought onto the table. A lot of women don't go into politics because they fear that they're going to be dragged into the mud. So let's use that as an example to paint the risk analysis, or how do you analyze your risk? So risks can be analyzed. So now we have an example of a risk, which is mudslinging stroke reputation, which is a barrier, or you also don't want you to encourage a lady to go into politics and then they go into it and then they're insulted, and then it affects their self-esteem, maybe even damages them emotionally. So that's a risk. So the risk is really, if you really analyze that risk, it has many facets. So risk can be analyzed by anticipating the unexpected and also assessing the following. What are the gaps you foresee? Then you rate them. Will they cause immobility? Are you likely to move forward if this issue is resolved? Or doesn't it have, there's a screen that's stuck, or it just doesn't matter? Those are some of the things you want to look at. And then how will you address those gaps? And then how will you still be able to measure success even in the presence of risk? So let's take an example of reputation in the case that a young girl is interested in politics, but they have all these risks. So number one, you've already seen, you've done a very good job in terms of understanding the risk and foreseeing the challenges. And you have many examples. So it is, you rate them. And by rating them is what I was giving an example. So it's not just understanding that there is a high risk of women getting mudslinged or being insulted or being harassed while they go into politics. But what we are doing is we are already cognizant of the fact that there's this risk. And then you rate them. Like, for example, you've said, so there's the risk of reputation, emotional damage, potentially self-esteem issues and all that. And we've seen all these things happening on our day-to-day lives. It's important for you to so that you can help the young girls or the women you're working with. How do they address? So maybe the mitigation will be, are we going to hire a consultant so that you can be able to paint your image or start working on your PR and image way before you go into politics? you know. So those are some of the things that you need to start understanding. So even as you go back to your businesses or your initiatives, start looking at the various types of risks and analyze them using these tools. You know, what are the issues? If, for example, this risk is not addressed, how will it affect how is it going to affect the implementation of the project? So that's very, very critical. So once you've done your risk assessment, now you're ready to go, you know, and this is the typical project cycle. So there's the initiation, the planning, the execution, the monitoring and controlling, and then the closure of the project. Remember, we said it's a cycle. It's a cycle. And I think in the smaller group, one of the things I encouraged everybody to do, even a small audience, and subject them to this process. Like, for example, the lady who's working with with the women in leadership. So what is your initiation process? Do you want to have them on a WhatsApp group? And you start having this discussion. And then once you're in that group, you'll start prompting them to ask them questions. You know, what are your needs? Everything. And then you start selling your vision to them. And then, of course, you start planning. So paint out that in this particular cycle. But typically, there's always the initiation phase. There's the planning phase. So the initiation stage this is where design thinking comes in, yeah? So the design thinking stage, this is the design thinking stage, and the process of beginning to decide exactly what you want to do and how you want to do it. This is achieved by developing a business case, or a case, in this case, of you have an NGO or a CBO, of identifying and scoping, and then identifying the key stakeholders. And then after that, you move to the planning stage. So this is the stage when you get others on board and identify the resources needed. And at this stage, you brief the team members, you create a work plan, and then you do an estimated budget. And then there's the execution phase. So this is now, once all that is done, so this is the stage when you go on the ground and start getting the work done. When implementing the project, you also pay attention to managing the budget, monitoring the quality of the work, and analyzing project and team results. Very, very critical. In fact, I think in project management, and I think as you continue to interact with ADEM and the platform and the resources, budgeting is a whole lot of, it's like an entire course done independently. Because if you get the budget wrong, then of course, you know, there's a very, very high possibility that the project might not even get to the implementation phase. And then of course, we put M&E tools, so monitoring and control. At this stage, you ensure that you're implementing the goal set within the time duration and within the allocated budget. And this is where a lot of people struggle. So you find that in the middle of the project, you realize, oh, I was supposed to have gone to, right now it is raining and I can't use motorbike, yet the budget that you had put is motorbike budget. And then maybe you need to use a taxi. So even at the budgeting phase, it's very important for you to think about the different possibilities. What if it rains? What if the fire goes up? What is all that? So we budget for it on time. And then at the last stage, there's closure. So this is the conclusion where you identify the successes and the challenges and the processes, and then also account for the used and the unused budget. There's always a point where also maybe you didn't use the budget, but maybe it's because you opted to use a digital platform as opposed to a physical platform, but that has to be documented and captured. So when the money remains, don't say that we made a very good savings and then you fail to plan for it in your next project. And then once you have done all that, you've started, now you want to start the process, you have to do a work plan. How does a work plan look like? So a work plan is a document that guides you through the implementation. So most of us have these big ideas. So the work plan helps us start breaking it down into small and manageable pieces. So it's just a simple document. For some people, it is a page. And there are tools which can really help you. I mean, there are tools, brief tools which can help you. In the case of a business, most of us use a business plan. We've used a business plan for a very long time, but now we've also started using something called a business canvas model, which really helps us plan our business in a very lean approach. So it helps. So a work plan is a document that guides through the implementation and execution processes, and it helps in keeping track of all the processes and steps to be made. It also helps in tracking progress of the problem and the solution. What are the key aspects that should include in a work plan? So where are you? So you have to define your capacity, you have to define your values, you have to define what you're doing, why you're doing, and then why are you the change maker, and why are you trying to bring the change in the society? And then your work plan include your key beneficiaries. Who's going to benefit the most with the project? Or what do you stand to lose if this project is not done? It's always very important for you to answer that question when you're defining the beneficiaries. And then what is the problem you're trying to solve? This could be answered by doing an environmental scan or the problem tree analysis, which is also a resource and a tool that you can use. But of course, like you're saying, it is very critical for you to really answer, identify the problem and state it now in your work plan. So this is where you start, like the things you had been investigating, your findings in the field, you start putting them in the work plan. And then of course, what is your position on the issue? Clearly articulate it. The conviction of you giving or offering emotional support to children who've been through children's homes. And then what is your message of change? Very, very clearly articulate your message of change in your work plan. And then what change do you want to see based on the priority? What is the end result of the project? So you document all that. And then of course, it's important for you to pre-think about who are you collaborating with, why. And we have a very good example where we've seen now Koskei is telling us that, she now knows it's important to collaborate with men in the community because the men in the community are the custodians of culture. And then what is your strategy? And that informs your strategy. So now Koskei is not only going to the community to discuss other issues, she's also going to the community. She is going to the community to engage men so that they are able to help her support or collaborate with her initiative, because it's very critical for men to be involved in this process because they're custodians of culture. So her strategy is also not only talking to the women, but also engaging the men within the community. So what are the key activities? Who will you engage? Are you networking? Are you, what are you involved in? And then how do you monitor and evaluate? What are the key indicators used to measure success of the project? And I think, Koskei, I'll put you on the spot. I'll ask you a question. How do you monitor and evaluate your project? How do you know that, hey, now my project is getting in the right direction? Lillian.
Oh, thank you. Some of the indicators that are so visible at the moment is the increased number of girls enrollment in primary schools. Mm-hmm. We have reduced cases of child marriages, although to some, not very much, but at least in a span of 2 years, if you compare before, like in a small village called Barpelo, every year, maybe around 20 girls could get married under the age of 13, 14. But as we speak right now, we have at least the number as maybe, these are few cases of 4 to 3. And then the other thing is also another indicator is the number of men who willingly attend our community dialogues forums, because we have the community dialogues forums. So at first, women used to come, and then when we said now we want men to join us, we used to have the pastor alone, maybe with a friend. But these days, I'm so surprised because men are even, outnumbering women. So those are some of the indicators. And then the other thing also is another good one is we usually conduct something called alternative rite of passage training, although this was highly affected during COVID-19 phase. But I used to really toil to get girls coming to our camp for the mentorship and leadership training. But these days, the number of girls who want to come for it are so many, even more than the one that our small budget can cater for. So those are some of the few indicators.
Yeah, and I think those are good indicators, and I think you really nailed it. M&E, monitoring and evaluation, is supported by numbers. And it could be factual, like you're saying. I like just a simple indicator, like there is increased enrollment of girls in schools.
Yes.
Tick. Then there is more men are coming to our forums. That's a gain. And even the fact that you're saying traditionally it's the chief who used to come, but now the chief is. So that already goes to say that whatever interventions and strategies that you have put into place are actually giving you results.
Yes.
You know, and then you see the importance of documenting this entire journey is, you know, maybe initially your strategy was go to women, try and give them this information. But then maybe when you shifted to the gear of also working with men, now you're seeing the results. And the whole idea will be for you to consistently document all these things and, you know, and consistently interrogate the how and the strategy. And of course, like you're saying, maybe the women wanted to come, but if you had interrogated them earlier, they would say, I'm not going to come because my husband is not going to allow me to sit in that forum, or I can't come alone. You know, so involving men was a good strategy. And then of course, it already indicates in your project. And even here, it is very important at this phase to also note that this is also where you document your key learnings. So you had all these assumptions, then it didn't work, and then maybe it will inform how you handle your next strategy. So what are the key components of a work plan? And I think I like putting this format, because this is also the format that a lot of, you know, because I believe most of us are going out to look for money, you know, or to try and look for donors or support. So these are some of the things that, you know, a template that will also guide you in just documenting your initiative. So the title of the project has to be very clear. So Lillian, again, what's the title of your project? Do you have a title? Is it branded?
Yes, a title of a project. Okay. This is what's
the title of your initiative?
The organization is called Sauti Dada Africa, but the other one is to empower a pastoralist, empower a Pokot pastoralist girl child.
Okay, so that's very powerful. You know, so you're moving away from the organization brand to having a specific project within the organization. And then of course there's clarity. I think I already hear the clarity of the problem being addressed, which is to really minimize harmful cultural practices. You know, and then of course, what's the desired outcome? And I think for you, the desired outcome is very clear. And you started by saying it even in your story. You do not want any Pokot girl child to go through what you went through. And then you went ahead and you gave us examples of its FGM, its early forced marriages. So the desired outcome is for us to have more and more women or young girls have access to opportunities. You know, they're not forced into marriages and things like that. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. So what do you include in your, so the first section, where are you now? And I think I'd earlier asked, so for example, how many girls have you, you know, worked with?
1,700.
And then what is your goal? What is your ultimate goal? What do you want to achieve?
Oh, I want to achieve a society that upholds the human rights, the well-being and the dignity of women and girls in a pastoral community. I'm being so verbose. The end goal is to have a community free from all forms of gender-based violence that violates the rights of a woman and a girl.
Great. Do you have a time frame in which you're going towards your goal? By which year?
By 2020, I'm not that one. I don't have a time for that, but at least I want in the next 8 years, we have a number of girls in secondary schools and number of girls in colleges.
Okay, yeah, and I think that's also very important, because I know at times you want to solve this really big and mighty problem. So, you know, you might want to you know, be very specific to your community.
Yeah.
So you can say within the Pokot community, and then you can narrow it down by, because you do have the statistics, you know. So these are some of the things that also help you when you start fundraising. A work plan will help you define the specific audience. So within the villages you're working with, do you have the number of girls who are within that village?
Yeah. Now in the ward where I come from, Not very clear, but of the 2 sub-locations that I am currently or I constantly work with, I have a database of girls, 700 non-school going girls. And we only have 114 school going girls.
Yeah, so maybe your specific achievement would be you want to move these 700 school going girls for them to up to 50%. So you want up to 50% of these young girls to go to achieve or access education in the next 3 years.
Yes. Okay.
So you break it down into manageable pieces. So it stops being just an amorphous thing that you're doing. It's now specific. And I'm just using you as an example because you're right in front of my screen. I can see you. I can see Celestine too, but I think because of time, let's just use example. So that's what you want to do. So you want to define, achieve, very specific. And at times it can be just in the month of September, I want out of these 700 girls to tell them about education. To just tell them about education, and then you move them to the ladder. So these goals will be every time you're doing the project, it's broken down in the bigger 10-year plan, 5-year plan, then 1 year, then in the 1 year, 1 month, then weekly. What are you doing on your weekly day-to-day activity? That's how our work plan looks like. So for example, if you saying that you want to, out of these 700 non-going school girls, you want them to have or access education in the next 5 years. That's your broad goal. And then now you come and now you break it down. So you say, what am I going to do in the next 5 years? Okay, year 1, what will I do? In January, I will ensure that out of these 700 girls, I have told them or given them a brochure about education, or school. And then in the next 2 months, you break it down like that into small and manageable timelines. And then what are the resources that you require? Answer that question. And when you start breaking down the goals into smaller manageable pieces, you start understanding what is the resource that I require in January? What is the resource that I require in December? Because if you do not understand or if you don't answer all those questions, you might find that you will invest in something that you didn't require in January, yet it was required in December. And I'll give you an example because I've been a victim of that. One time I had this really big ambitious goal of just this platform. And then because I had not done a process like this, I went and paid 500,000 shillings to put up a website. An e-commerce platform. And then once the website was ready or the e-commerce, and then I was like, oops, who are the people who are going to stock? Where are the women who are going to sell? And then suddenly I had a crisis and I'd already paid, for the platform. Then I started realizing that, oops, I should have started this process by having the women doing this. And let me tell you, 4 years later, I've restarted afresh, but I'm using the resources wisely. So now what am I using? I'm using a Facebook page. I'm using a Facebook group. I'm using WhatsApp. Are they still on a digital platform? Yes. But I'm able to know that I'm now going back, I'll go back and eventually invest in an e-commerce platform, but at least I'm using the resources wisely. So having a clearly defined goal and understanding the needs will also help us manage resources. Imagine I already wasted that resource. It's gone, never to come back. The website is still there, but it's still not even functional.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, so that's what you're saying. So you have to break down your goal into specific time frames, day to day, weekly, and then the bigger goal. In the absence of that, then you'll stretch your resources. What do you need to drive your goal? For example, in your case, you already know that you need the buy-in of the community, not only the women, but also the men. And then what do you need to strengthen yourself? Very, very important. That at times when you are setting up, founders have this thing, you forget about yourself. So you also need to go and interrogate what are the personal things you will need as a founder. Do you need a salary? Very important. Salarize yourself. Even if it's 10,000 shillings a month, and budget it. Put it in the budget. Put a salary. Put the structure. Because if you don't, for example, know where your rent is coming from, your food is coming from, it's also a point of concern. So also very important, it's important for you to, at the budget phase or the planning phase, interrogate what are your personal needs as well, so that you can also be able to budget for them, because you're the one who's driving this particular initiative. And then you go to the planning stage. So where is this activity going to take place? And you're given a be as specific as you can. When will I do it? What are the set timelines? Who is involved? How will each activity be delivered? And then section 3 is now where you're implementing. Here you do what you had planned to do. You start doing the day-to-day things you had put in your outline and the strategies and the schedules to implement the project. And then of course, as the project is ongoing, you're also re-evaluating on a constant basis. Was the goal achieved? Was it not achieved? Has it included, you have to document the success stories, and this is done by talking to the participants of the project or engaging the users of the project, and then counting the milestones and noting them down and the areas of improvement. At this particular stage, it's also very critical for you to really take the key learnings, and then finally celebrate and reward yourself and the team for the work done. And then now you'll be good to go. Oops, sorry, what happened? I was kicked out of sharing screen. Let me just reshare my screen again. Sorry about that. Oh God.
Do you need assistance, madam?
No. It's. We'll be back shortly.
Okay.
Share. There you go.
You're on the last slide. There.
Okay, so typically those are the 4 main stages. Of course, you do all that, you implement, you reevaluate, you ask questions, you take your key learning processes, and then you close the project. So once you close the project, you'll definitely have a clear output. So you go back and you look at, these are the things that you're supposed to have been addressing. This is how we went through the process. And then you do a tick box. So you say, if you were to reach out 700 girls, reevaluate, and you do a tick. And they're like, oh, okay, we reached 200. Why did we reach 200? And then now this will give you a basis to do the strategy for the next project. So I think definitely crash program, but I think that is where I'd like to stop so that I can take in questions. It's exactly 11:45 according to my watch, and maybe Adem, we can open it up for Q&A.
Absolutely, and I'm really looking forward to Q&A. But before that, and just very briefly, there's so many things that Maureen has put into this class that are so incredibly impactful, but a lot of them would be very clear with some sort of, what do we call it, templates. Okay, there are a lot of resources that are available, including Gantt charts that help you just map out your project plan. It helps you say who is going to do what by when, and allows you to follow up on how the project is ongoing as the project is happening. And if something hasn't happened the way it was supposed to happen, you can also include it in that thing. So what else are we going to do on the platform? And we will send you an onboarding email on Monday. And this is what is going to be included as part of those downloadable resources. We said we're going to include a mind map, a stakeholders mind map. And the other thing also going to include are some of these resources that can help you in the project mapping that Maureen mentioned. And why are this important? It is one thing to come on a Saturday morning to have a crash course on project management. It's another thing to be able to actually utilize this knowledge to make sure that you're able to manage your projects properly. So whatever we can do on our end to help you do that, we will do that, okay? So we are here on your side and we've got you. Finally, I want you guys to remember, and this is something we'll say towards the end of the class in the next 15 minutes. We have next week, we'll be talking about fundraising for your project, okay? And we'll talk about proposals and things like that. So good. So for now, let's take questions about this class, okay? What questions do you have for Maureen? Is there something that you wanted to learn about this part of project management that wasn't very clear? What do you need clarification on? You can either type it in the chat box or you can unmute yourself and ask the question. So who wants to go first? We have around 15 minutes to the end of this session.
I'll go first. For me, it's not a question. For me, it's more or less like an appreciation of you guys sitting down and actually coming up with such kind of an idea. Because yes, I was sharing my part of the organization and what I usually do. But as I was sharing, I realized there are some things with this knowledge that I'm going to change. Yeah. And the fact that I've even come to understand what more project management is, that yes, I have attended other seminars, but there's a way you guys have crafted your presentation that has helped me understand more, and it has actually simplified my work now moving forward. Because, for example, like the design thinking, the rest that I have ever attended, even the ones I did in class, they didn't have anything of this sort. So it actually makes me think of, there's so many things we have in the organization and they're not working. And it's not because they can't work for this organization. It's because no one had actually thought a little bit deeper to make it more efficient for this organization. So for me, thank you so much for this class. And I actually got this as an advertisement through Facebook, and I was like, okay, why not? Let me just try, you never know. So thank you so much, Maureen. You've actually opened up my eyes, and now I'm even more enthusiastic about moving forward and actually doing more of impact. So thank you.
Oh my God, that is the best news ever. It is worth the late nights and the stress and the drama that sometimes comes into making classes like this happen. So I really appreciate that feedback, okay? And Celestine, I can see the feedback you've given on the chat box. The steps have never been outlined so clearly. Thank you. Celestine, thank you. I think this is not the very first time. So I am absolutely. Thank you. Stella, you raised your hand, and Sarah, you are unmuted. Let's go with Sarah. Then
yeah. Thank you so much. Mine is to. Can I go on?
Yes, please go on.
Yes,
Hello.
Sarah, please go on.
Hello. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
You know, I have an issue with my network, so if I keep trying to fetch the information, please understand, yeah? So I just want to appreciate you for the good work, Maureen. Those are very good insights. And already I know where to begin, because I had started some projects and they stalled on the way because maybe I had not designed it for my audience or stakeholders. And maybe sometimes our assumptions might not align with the real stakeholders need. So you advised me that I get maybe a mapping of like 20 ladies, and then we come up with a plan or maybe something we can start on. And I think to jumpstart, because yes, you might think you're good at things, but at times when you want to do solid projects, you need such guidance, and you need to be more particular and more, to be sure of what you're doing. And I found this post online. I know Adele has been doing this Village to Nation project, and I was like, it looks so organized, and the way you advertised it looked like, and with a certificate, actually, yeah, most of the time we've lived our lives doing and participating in programs where you have nothing to show, for it. So the certificate was a win for me. And also, seeing her do this and growing to these levels, I know even my project can get there, learning from the best. So I appreciate you so much, Maureen. Continue being that, you're knowledgeable on this area. So I think it's not a waste of time for me. I've fetched a lot, and thank you so much. change. It's never the same again.
Yeah, so let me just use that, the two examples we've had, and that's what I said. Even as we are starting to think about our projects, let's look at how we can leverage on the social media and the digital space. So I think for you, Sarah, I'm really looking forward to you either just even forming a simple WhatsApp group with the women that you anticipate to inspire or to onboard.
So
that's
Maureen,
yes.
Just to interject, I run a movement of almost 1,500 women. We have a
Nice.
WhatsApp group.
We have
I'm working now on a website and maybe an application. We have an email. You see that we collect the memberships through email. You know that application from the email. I don't know how you record your county, your what, you give your detail, right? So that's what we use right now. I have done meetings with them physically before the lockdown and the restrictions came out. I've done it since 2016. So I think now what I need to do now is to do more progressive and solid, as you advised, solid, what are they called, projects. For instance, if it's capacity building on what? Now you taught us about project management. What can I teach them? Who can I source to equip them with the kind of skills and knowledge? Yeah, I think that's where we are at.
Okay, thanks, Sarah.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Sarah. And before we go to Stella, Annette, I note your comment on the chat box. Yes, we will share all these presentation slides as well on the platform. Ladies and gentlemen, we have a virtual platform where we will upload all this and we'll show you how to create an account, and then you can download them whenever you need them, okay, in perpetuity. Okay, so please do not worry about this. One of my team members on Monday by Monday, will send you an email on how to access all of this. So do not worry, we got you, okay? We got you, promise. Stella, you had raised your hand. Stella, well.
Can you hear me?
If you could move closer to the phone, that would be wonderful.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yes.
All right. My sentiments are the same as my colleagues. It's such a learning experience. I'm grateful for this platform. Same case, my win-win was the certificate, because definitely being a project manager, you've gone through the training of project management, but we never quit learning. Every day is a learning day and a learning process. So I've learned a lot, by the way. We will have done project management for a whole semester as a unit and as a whole course, but it can't outdo this. So much practical. I love to hear from the real life experiences and the networking. Super, congrats, guys. I'm looking forward to more learning experiences.
Yay, that is wonderful. We'll also tell you how to get your certificate, so please do not worry about that. But I love the feedback. So this is definitely making my weekend. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Is there anyone with any questions or comments as we're closing out the session?
Yes.
Yes, Celeste.
Yes. Okay. Thank you again so much for the session. It's been wonderful. I was a bit skeptical about joining in, but hey, I guess it was worth the risk. and I'm so grateful that I actually took up that risk. Then that's number one. Number two, we've been having so many job opportunities at my place of work regarding to projects and project management, project opportunities, and I've been trying to check them out and shying away from them. Although I have a background in projects, only that I've not been able to do something that is actually directly involved to it. And if I've been too quiet, don't worry, I learn from others. Hopefully I'll be able to open up as time goes by, because sometimes you learn and then you can be able to open up as you get to get the knowledge. So I don't think I'll shy away from those opportunities anymore, because I feel so ready to just try and apply for some of these opportunities. And thanks.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much. Yes.
Quick question.
Celestine, don't shy away from taking up challenges because you're not aware. I think it's one of these qualities. If they're given a job, I think Adem will know who said it. they'll take it up and then they'll learn. I don't know if it was Richard Branson or who.
Yeah.
You know, so
actually, I think I did read something like that from Richard Branson, I think from LinkedIn.
absolutely.
And I managed to apply for actually some of these positions. I got through to the interview level, but I was unsuccessful in one. So I'm hoping that maybe the other two would be positive or something like that. So with this training and many more to come, because I already am following your page, I hope that I should be able to learn even more. Thanks so much.
Absolutely. But before you go, Celestine, you said something at the beginning.
Yes.
Skeptical about joining in. Can you please just give us a bit of info on why you were skeptical and what was the push factor?
My push factor was the certificate, most definitely. Because we go for trainings, we have gone for so many trainings, and you're like, okay, so when you're at an interview panel, you're like, yeah, I've done this, I've done that, but there's really nothing to show out of it. Okay. But with this particular one, the steps are so clear. I did not see these steps when I was in uni, funny enough. But right now the steps are so clear and they are so good, and I'm very enthusiastic about even making, steps towards doing my own thing. So to me, this is a plus. Thank you so much. Yes.
Thank you.
Okay. Karibu sana.
Education was such a big deal. We would have made sure that we provided it a lot earlier.
Oh, yes.
Thank you so much for that. Absolutely. One final person with a question or a comment as we close out the session. Then I'll hand the mic over to Maureen to just finish up. One final person. Anyone with a question or a comment?
The men are quiet.
Yes.
But anyway, Noella, please go.
Oh, thank you so much. But I'm going to give men their chance to speak. We all aspire for gender equality. I'm so grateful for the forum. I was very skeptical also at first, because most of us who are looking for jobs these days, you really can't tell which advert is genuine. Sometimes you end up paying money and it doesn't happen. Sometimes you're con. So there's always that fear. And I tell you, this was one of the greatest risks that I took, because I was like, let me just pay, because I actually saw one of my when I was in college, there was this guy who once contested for the position of, I think it was the president, and I saw him posting this about the village to nation, and I raised, and here I am, and I am very grateful, because I was like, if anything happened, I would look for his number wherever he is and ask him why he posted a scam, something like that. But I am so grateful, and I really look forward to more insightful lessons from you. I'm really willing to join and learn more from you. It has really helped me. Like I mentioned, my CBO is a very small one in a very harsh community and environment, but I have now known how to mitigate all these risks, and I'll put into practice all what I'm planning to do. And at the end of the day, everybody, it will be a win-win situation for me and the girls as well, and the women. So thank you so much, everyone who is here. And thank you also for sharing about, somebody mentioned about the organization having some opportunities. It's good to talk about that. And maybe from today onwards, we're going to be a team of scholars who are willing to help each other and network and push each other forward. Thank you so much.
Thank you, and thank you, and thank you. So Daniel is saying, thank you so much. I have learned a lot, especially in design thinking and how to map out key questions before project execution. Great presentation. Maureen, thank you. So again, ladies and gentlemen, and I'm just going to plug this in because I would be a bad person if I don't. I can tell that a lot of us are trying to figure out the next step in your career, and I'll just plug this in, okay? At Village to Nation, we also have early career and late career masterclasses. It goes beyond just writing a CV. It's about how do you present it to the powers that be, how do you network your way into organizations and whatnot. We will also share with you information about that. So ladies and gentlemen, again, I said, we will share with you information on how to access these slides and all the other downloadable resources that you can use, be it mind mapping, be it project resources. We just want to make sure that whatever skills you need that will take you to the next step forward, we will give it to you, okay? Then you will also be officially added onto onto our email list. If you want to unsubscribe, you can always unsubscribe. What does our email list have? I send out emails every week, and these emails get a lot of really good love and really good feedback, because they're about how do you build a career and the life of your dreams. So that is wonderful. Okay, thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen, for joining. So Maureen, do you have any parting shot that you have after this?
Yes. So parting shot, every time I think about delivering content, I always have the user in mind, and I like to be as practical as I can. So I look at the concept and I break it down to, a manageable conversation, because I'm a conversation person. So I don't like delivering content. And I think that's one of the key things that I've learned. So I think it's a skill that we're saying, once you understand your innate personality, and then you understand why you're doing what you're doing, you're able to swiftly plug it in the community or the things that you're doing. So also very critical, understand your predominant personality and how that applies in your day-to-day engagement and conversations. Thanks so much, Adem, for giving me this opportunity. Thank you for your participation, everyone. I think we said it will be as exciting as we participate. Yes. And I didn't feel like I was talking to myself. Please go to the Village to Nation Facebook page, give a review, give a shout out, share your experience, So I think that's how you create a mothball effect. And I think if everybody goes through these practical solutions, then we also help Village to Nation drive their agenda. And I think Adem has a very big goal, but you can also see, Village to Nation, very big one. But today we were only 20. I think when you started, we were 20. And now we are 15 people remaining on this call. So go back to the respective platforms where you saw the advert and say, hey, give a thumbs up. So I think for me, just give the love back, share, give your reviews, go to the Facebook page, rate it, and let's keep the ball rolling.
Thank you, Maureen Amakabane. So finally, because I feel like I've said like 62 finalists, I know it's a Saturday. I know we have a live that we want to go to. I have a date after this, so I'm also excited to just jump off when we can. But this is what's going to happen, okay?